Hello and welcome to this tutorial on the GSI AMTAS Flex. What we're going to do today is go through the Flex software and the Flex configuration application. So as you can see here, I've just installed Flex and I have these two icons that show up on the screen here. One of them is the actual software that we use with our patients, and then the second one here is how we set up the AMTAS configuration. So what I'm going to do is open up this Flex configuration application here. I've already have it open in the desktop, so we'll pop it out. And here's where it opens up to. This is the reports page, and this is the spot where all the reports following the patient test will be populating. There are a couple of different types of reports that are going to be available for each of the different patients that runs through the evaluation. You'll get an audiologist report and a patient report. If you're doing high-frequency testing, that will end up being a separate report. We also have an optional consent form that the software makes them acknowledge prior to taking the evaluation, and that is saved as a report as well. And then there is also a screening report if you're using the screening functionality of the Flex. You can, of course, use the drop-down here to sort the different types of tests, and the little icons give you an idea of what the type of test is as well. Okay. So what we'll do is we will go through and just kind of move through these menu options here on the left, beginning with our general options. So we do have a couple of display options, including the language. There are over 24 languages that are available to set for AMTAS Flex. So right now we're just going to stick with English, but we do have languages that are available for guiding the patient through that are different than English. So this language option here is kind of for the global settings. It gives you, the configuration app in English and the testing in English, but you can have this software guide a patient through in their native language, any of the 24 that we have available here. So essentially what you would do is move through the master list and then click on the languages that you would like included as an option for your patient population, move them into selected. And then when we get to the welcome screen, I can show you where you can access those on the fly. Okay. With the reports here, you also have the option of adding in your own logo, and this is where you would have that. This extended logging is basically information about how the system is working. So in the situation where the software is malfunctioning or you're having an issue with your device, you could send us the log files, which is the diagnostic information from the device, to our engineers so we can take a look at that and help diagnose the problem. That is all that is in reference to. The real magic, or the real decisions rather, of AMTAS Flex are going to happen here in the workflow section. The general options are kind of our global options for the software itself. And this is where we really get into what our patient protocol is going to be. So we'll make some decisions about the test itself, what happens before the test and after the test. So I was talking about that consent form. It is an option that you can have pop up prior to testing. Currently, we have the European Union, I believe it is the General Data Protection Regulation. This is just a placeholder. You can put in your own consent form, whether it's patient privacy or whatever you would like them to have them acknowledge prior to testing. You can place here just by importing. Then we have a couple of options that include the display patient information screen. And this is if you are wanting to capture patient information from this software itself. And if that's the case, you would go to the demographics screen here and check mark the things that you want them to enter in. You can pick whatever fields you would like. And then of these required fields, what is going to be included in the report when it's completed. The next is the headphone check. And this headphone check is a way for, well, it does two things. Number one, it makes sure the headphones are on the correct ear, but it's also going to work as a way to help getting the patient or the subject familiar with using the software. So the headphone check prompts them to play a tone and then pick the ear on the touch screen that they're hearing the different sound in. and that kind of gets them used to interacting with the software prior to the beginning of the evaluation. And then next is the instructions. We have two different options, well, three if you select none, but we have a video option that runs through expectations of the test and how to take the test. And then we have text options. If you are using a language other than English, it will automatically default to this text option and show those directions or instructions rather in their language using the text option. And then we have testing options for the test itself. We have basically two different decisions to make here, diagnostic or screening. So if we're doing diagnostic, we're going to be doing pure tone air conduction threshold testing. And if we're doing screening, we're doing more of a simple procedure. We'll leave it at diagnostic for right here, but we'll look at both options. The other option that you have is to use noise monitoring. The AMTAS Flex comes standard with an additional noise microphone that is calibrated. That calibration is loaded over here when you hook up both the headphone and the microphone. That should be on a USB that is included with the AMTAS Flex system. But basically, this noise monitor allows you to gather information about what was happening in the environment. Oftentimes, AMTAS Flex is not performed inside of a sound booth, so it is useful to be able to know if the conditions were suitable for testing while the audio is being captured. And we'll talk a little bit more about noise monitoring in just a moment. So then this is our options during the test and then after the test. After the test, if we want to see those PDFs, we'll have it generate that report. We can also move that report as a PDF or a PNG to a different folder. So you can set up here so that every time that a test is completed, that it will automatically send a PDF outside of the reports dialog here in the software to a folder, either on the PC or somewhere else on the network if it's a networked PC. And then you can determine what pieces of information that you want to basically build the name of the file. So if you're capturing the patient information, those types of things, you can have that included into the name of the actual file. However, if you are keeping the patient demographics out of it, session date and session time are probably the best way to keep track of everything. And then again, like I said, once the evaluation is over, once the patient has completed it, it puts a PDF into this folder of your choosing. This display report here is basically just an option for the patient report to pop up at the end of the evaluation. So in the event that you're not there right away to give context and explain the results of the patient, you could have this report pop up that shows their audiogram. There is a textual explanation of the audiogram, how to interpret the audiogram, and then a small blurb about their individual thresholds that is based on the testing results. So that is an option for you to have this display at the end of the evaluation. Or you can leave that unchecked and you can have it just return to the welcome screen. The other option here that you see is export data. And what this does is this sends an XML file, which is different from the PDF that we're talking about from the report. The XML file is what we use to get into GSI Suite, which is our separate reporting software. So you can move this data from the Flex to GSI Suite. There are a couple of different ways that you can do that, either by wirelessly connecting your tablet to another PC running Suite. You can run Suite on the same tablet that you're running AMTAS and move things over locally. Or you can take and save this information to a USB and physically bring that to another computer and then load it into GSI Suite that way. So that's what the difference is between exporting the data and up here where we're talking about the display report. Okay, let's move on. So we'd already talked about our demographic options that we have. The next thing we want to talk about is noise monitoring. If we had the microphone all connected and everything set up, what we could do is do our noise check, and we would see here that we do have the microphone going, and you can see the different noise levels in the room as I'm talking. You can see my voice kind of moving things. So this is a way for you to basically check the room prior and see if you're getting, maybe there's some fan noise. You would see something spiking here at 250 or 500. If I'm really quiet for a second, we can get a better idea of what this room is like. And that's really not too bad. So that's what the noise check is for, but basically with our report, we have some options on how we want to view that data and the maximum permissible amounts of sound at each of the different octaves, that we can set this individually ourselves so that the report flags us when it reaches those levels. So we have OSHA levels, we have ANSI levels, and then we also have your own available custom levels that you can define as well. And if you have this turned on, the noise monitor will be running from the moment that the patient begins the evaluation through the entire length of it. And at the end, you'll get a report that gives you all the details about what's happening at all these octaves, the maximum levels, and then what's happening from a distraction alert point of view. We'll skip screening for the moment and just go down to diagnostic to complete this. This is primarily where most people are going to use it. Right now, we have selected all of the different octave frequencies for testing and a few of the inner octaves. If you have the DD450 high-frequency headphones, you are able to do these high-frequency testing as well. Couple of notes. You'll see that you have the ability to deselect the different octaves and still run the test. You'll see that these ones here with the asterisks by them, so with AMTAS, when we get our report at the end, we have a table of quality indicators that basically gives us information about how the patient took the evaluation. When AMTAS was validated, all of these frequencies here with the asterisk were all included in that research. So by deselecting some of these frequencies, you may not get all of the classification and quality indicators at the end, so just be aware of that. The other thing I want to point out here is you can kind of see what's happening as I'm selecting and deselecting these octaves. In order for you to be able to select and trigger these inner octaves to test every single time, you've got to make sure that for this inner octave here, for example, 1500, I need to have both octaves that surround it. So I need 500 and 1000 to be on. If I were to eliminate 500, then 750 wouldn't be an option. I'm sorry, it was between 500 and 1000. You get the idea. So keep that in mind. The other thing that you have here is options for disabling masking, which I would not recommend. As you may or may not be aware, AMTAS utilizes masking for all of the different presentations, regardless of whether it is required based on testing. It's just part of the overall evaluation and is an important part of the evaluation, so I would definitely not disable that. And then there's also the interoctave frequencies. If you have this triggered, the interoctave frequencies will be tested if the difference between the two adjacent octaves is greater than 20 dB, which is a very similar rule to what audiologists use when they're doing things manually. We're just going to bump back to screening here just for a second to talk about this a little bit. It really doesn't have all of the same quality indicators. The methodology is really, really simple. With the screening, it is a very simple test. Essentially, you will choose the frequencies that you want to have tested. You have to have at least 3 of them selected to be able to run this test. Basically, you just pick your intensity. So if I pick 35 here, it's going to present to each ear one time at each of these different frequencies. And that's it. And then it looks for the yes or no from there, and then you can set your passing criteria. So this is a very, very quick test. It can be very helpful for certain situations, but primarily I think most people are using the Flex for the diagnostic capabilities or the threshold capabilities that it has for air conduction. Okay, so that is the kind of just a real quick overview of the Flex configuration application. One thing I do want to point out is that when we start the evaluation here, of course, I know it is not licensed, thank you, but it will bring us to our welcome screen here. I just wanted to point out, this is where those different languages are available. So as I was saying earlier, if we wanted to do our next test in Danish, I would click on that. And then, of course, at the end of the evaluation, it would come back again to English as the default language. The other thing I wanted to point out here is that there's this little hamburger icon where you can exit out of the software. get information about the version, that kind of thing. And then there's also settings. And when you open up the settings from the welcome screen, you will notice that you have a configuration application, but a lot of the options for general options are grayed out. But you can still get through and do some of the things for the general testing. What this option allows you to do is set up something that's different from the protocol that you set with the configuration application. So as an example, you have a patient come in and maybe your regular protocol is doing all of these different octaves, but in this particular case, you just want to get a couple of frequencies. You could deselect a few of these and then hit start test, and then it will only do these frequencies here. And then when it's completed, it will return to the way that we have set up the configuration application from this icon and not from the welcome screen, which is your temporary session screen. So I hope this has been helpful for you, and stay tuned for more videos.